Okay, so um, you shared some research with me about the possibility of a new lizard species
Right.
being discovered in the Chinati Mountains of West Texas.
Yeah.
Which is already, I mean, a pretty fascinating location in and of itself, known for its stark landscapes and remoteness.
Yeah.
But a brand new species,
Yeah.
that's next level exciting. What really caught my eye is this Dixon's whiptail.
Uh-huh.
It's so visually similar to the checkered whiptail
Right.
that it's been really tough to tell them apart.
Yeah.
So our deep dive today used the work of biologists from UT Arlington
Okay.
to see if we can finally solve this mystery. Is this truly a distinct species?
Mm-hmm.
Or just a variation of the checkered whiptail?
Yeah.
And could this research even impact conservation efforts, maybe even leading to protection under the Endangered Species Act?
Yeah, so what's really intriguing here is that the answer lies in the DNA.
Okay.
By comparing DNA samples from both types of whiptails, researchers can determine once and for all if they're genetically distinct enough to be considered separate species.
And the technology they're using is cutting edge, right?
Yes.
This next generation genetic sequencer allows them to analyze
Right.
a huge amount of genetic information
Yes.
really quickly and accurately.
That's right. It's like having a super-powered microscope
Okay.
for DNA.
Mm-hmm.
This level of detail is crucial because it allows scientists to identify even tiny genetic differences
Yeah.
that might have been missed with older techniques. Think of it this way. Imagine trying to find a single misspelling
Oh, wow.
in a massive library full of books.
Yeah.
This sequencer is like having a tool that can scan every word in every book
Wow.
in the blink of an eye.
That's incredible. So if they find enough genetic differences,
Yes.
that would be pretty strong evidence that Dixon's whiptail deserves its own species classification.
Exactly. And if they don't find those differences, it doesn't mean the research is a failure.
Right.
It simply means we've gained valuable knowledge about the genetic diversity within whiptail lizards,
Okay.
which can be helpful for conservation efforts as well.
Right. So no matter what, we learned something important.
Exactly.
I read that these lizards are notoriously tricky to catch.
Oh, yeah.
All female,
Yeah.
super fast,
Yeah.
and blend in perfectly with their surroundings.
Yes.
The researchers are actually using these things called lizard lassos to capture them.
Uh-huh.
It sounds like something straight out of a Western movie.
It does, doesn't it? It highlights just how challenging fieldwork can be,
Yeah.
especially when studying elusive creatures like these. Imagine trying to catch a tiny, lightning-fast lizard
Oh my gosh.
with a miniature lasso
Yeah.
attached to a fishing pole.
Wow. The patience and skill involved is just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And speaking of skills, they mentioned something called single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs,
Right.
in the research. Can you break that down for us?
Sure.
How do SNPs play a role in determining if Dixon's whiptail is a unique species?
Think of your own DNA as a complex blueprint that determines your unique characteristics. SNPs are like tiny variations within that blueprint. Slight differences in the DNA sequence that can affect an organism's traits or make it more or less susceptible to certain diseases.
So by comparing the SNPs in Dixon's whiptail and the checkered whiptail,
Yes.
they can see how closely related they actually are. It's like those DNA ancestry tests
Right.
that tell you where your ancestors came from,
That's-
but for lizards.
Exactly. By analyzing these SNPs,
Uh-huh.
researchers are essentially creating a genetic fingerprint
Okay.
for each lizard, which they can then compare to see how similar or different they were. And this is where the next generation genetic sequencer really shines,
Okay.
because it can analyze thousands of these SNPs simultaneously.
Wow.
This allows for incredibly precise comparisons and can reveal subtle genetic relationships that might have been missed before.
So it's a combination of clever fieldwork techniques and cutting-edge technology.
Yes.
It's driving this research.
Precisely. And it's this kind of multifaceted approach
Yeah.
that's leading to incredible breakthroughs in our understanding of biodiversity.
The project is set to begin in January 2025,
Okay.
with results expected by the end of the year.
Great.
What I find exciting is that this research has the potential to make a real impact on conservation efforts.
Absolutely. If the DNA analysis confirms that Dixon's whiptail is a distinct and endangered species,
Right.
it could lead to its protection under the Endangered Species Act.
Which in turn could mean setting aside protected habitat.
Yes.
And developing a recovery plan to ensure its survival.
Exactly. It's a reminder that scientific discoveries don't just expand our knowledge, they can also lead to direct action to protect the incredible diversity of life on our planet.
This all started with a simple question. Is Dixon's whiptail truly a separate species?
Right.
But the potential answers have far-reaching implications for both science and conservation.
And that's what makes this research so compelling.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example of how a seemingly small discovery can open up a whole new world of understanding and possibilities.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating example of how scientific research can have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Influencing not just our understanding of the natural world,
right,
but also shaping policies and conservation efforts.
You mentioned the Endangered Species Act.
Right.
And I'm curious to learn more about how that works.
Sure.
What kind of protection would the Dixon's whiptail get if it was classified as endangered?
Well, the Endangered Species Act is a powerful piece of legislation designed to protect species at risk of extinction.
Okay.
Essentially, it throws a safety net around these species, offering them a fighting chance in a world where human activities can have a big impact on their survival.
So it's not just about preventing people from harming these animals directly.
Exactly. It goes beyond that.
Okay.
The Endangered Species Act prohibits killing,
harming, or capturing listed species.
Right.
But it also focuses on protecting their habitat.
Okay.
Think of it as safeguarding their home, the environment they need to thrive.
Yeah.
Any activity that could damage or destroy that habitat is strictly regulated.
So in the case of the Dixon's whiptail, this could mean setting aside land specifically for their conservation.
Right.
Kind of like creating a lizard sanctuary.
Precisely. That's one potential outcome.
Okay.
And it's not just about protecting the land itself.
Right.
It's also about managing it in a way that benefits the species.
Okay.
This might involve restoring degraded habitat, controlling invasive species, or implementing other measures to ensure the long-term health of the ecosystem.
It sounds like a comprehensive approach, not just a Band-Aid solution.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
The Endangered Species Act is designed to be proactive, not reactive.
Got it.
It's about addressing the root causes of endangerment and developing long-term strategies for recovery.
I read that the researchers are going to compare the DNA they collect
to
samples they already have from previous studies.
Right.
What's the thinking behind that?
That's a really insightful question.
Yeah.
Comparing the new DNA samples to older ones allows researchers to track changes in the genetic makeup of these lizards over time.
Okay.
It's like looking at a family photo album, but instead of pictures, we're seeing snapshots of their DNA through the years.
So it's not just about confirming whether Dixon's whiptail is a separate species.
Right.
It's about understanding its evolutionary journey.
Exactly.
How it's adapted to its environment over generations.
Exactly. And that historical perspective can be incredibly valuable for conservation efforts.
Okay.
It helps us understand how these lizards have responded to past environmental changes and how they might be affected by challenges like climate change in the future.
It's fascinating to think that these tiny creatures carry so much information within their DNA, a whole legacy of adaptation and survival.
It is, isn't it? And it highlights the importance of genetic research in conservation. By unlocking the secrets of their DNA, we can gain insights that help us make more informed decisions about how to protect these lizards and the ecosystems they depend on.
Earlier, you mentioned that the researchers are hoping to have some answers by the end of next year.
Yes.
So in a little over a year,
we
could potentially have definitive proof of a new species. And a roadmap for its conservation.
That's the hope. And what's even more exciting is that this research could have implications beyond the Dixon's whiptail.
What do you mean?
Well, if this project is successful, it could pave the way for similar research on other cryptic species, animals that are so similar to other species that they've gone unnoticed. It could open up a whole new frontier of discovery. Revealing hidden biodiversity right under our noses.
That's an incredible thought. We could be on the verge of a wave of new species discoveries. All thanks to advances in genetic analysis.
It's a really exciting time to be studying biodiversity. And it's a reminder that there's still so much we don't know about the natural world. Who knows what other wonders are out there waiting to be discovered?
So we've talked about lizard lassos and high-tech DNA analysis.
Yes.
But I'm kind of curious about the actual sampling process.
Yeah.
What happens once they actually catch a Dixon's whiptail?
Right.
How do they get the DNA they need for this research?
It's surprisingly straightforward and much less invasive than you might imagine.
Oh, okay.
Typically, researchers will take a small tissue sample from the tip of the lizard's tail.
Okay.
Lizards have this remarkable ability to regenerate their tails.
Wow.
So it's a relatively harmless procedure for the animal.
That's incredible. It's like something out of a comic book.
Right.
Lizards with superpowers.
Yeah.
They snip a bit of the tail.
Right.
And then what?
And
how do they go from this tiny piece of tissue to a full-blown DNA analysis?
That's where the magic of molecular biology comes in.
Okay.
Researchers use a series of chemical processes to break down the cells in the tissue sample, isolate the DNA, and then make copies of it.
Gotcha.
This gives them enough material to analyze using that next-generation sequencer we talked about earlier.
It sounds incredibly precise.
Oh, this.
Are there any challenges in getting good quality DNA samples from these lizards?
Sure.
Especially given the kind of harsh conditions of the Chinati Mountains.
There are always challenges in fieldwork,
right?
Especially when you're dealing with delicate biological material.
Right.
Things like environmental contamination or degradation of the sample can affect the quality of the DNA.
Okay.
But researchers are well aware of these challenges and have developed techniques to minimize those risks.
Okay.
They use special preservation methods to protect the samples and carefully control the laboratory environment to prevent contamination.
It's like a CSI investigation.
It is.
For lizards.
Yeah.
So, despite the challenges, it sounds like scientists are finding ways to ensure they're working with the most accurate data possible.
Absolutely. And that's critical because we're relying on this genetic information to answer some pretty big questions about the evolutionary history of these lizards and their potential need for protection.
It's amazing to think that we can learn so much from these tiny creatures. They're like living time capsules, holding clues to the history of life on Earth.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just about the past.
Right.
By understanding their genetic makeup, we can also get a glimpse into their future.
Okay.
How they might adapt to a changing environment and what we can do to help ensure their survival.
We've talked a lot about the scientific side of things.
Yes.
But I want to shift gears for a moment and talk about the people behind this research.
Yeah.
What drives their passion for these lizards?
Right.
And for unraveling these mysteries of the natural world.
The researchers involved in this project are a dedicated group of biologists with a deep love for the unique flora and fauna of West Texas.
Yeah.
They see this research as a way to contribute to our understanding of biodiversity and to advocate for the protection of often overlooked species like the Dixon's whiptail.
Okay.
They're driven by a sense of wonder and a desire to explore the hidden corners of our planet.
It's inspiring to think about them out there in the Chinati Mountains.
It is.
Lizard lassos in hand, pursuing their passion, and making discoveries that could have a real impact on conservation efforts.
It is inspiring, and it's a reminder that science isn't just about cold, hard facts. It's about passion, curiosity, and a deep connection to the natural world.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of the Dixon's whiptail, what's the key takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about as they go out their day?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the world is full of wonders, both big and small, and that there's still so much we don't know.
Right.
It encourages us to appreciate the incredible diversity of life around us and to support the work of those who are dedicated to understanding and protecting it.
Right.
And who knows, maybe it even inspires someone listening to go out and make their own discoveries, to explore their own backyard with a renewed sense of curiosity and wonder.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
It's been a fascinating journey into the world of lizard lassos, DNA detectives, and the potential discovery of a hidden species.
It has been fascinating.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring.